Robert in Coatbridge, however, he didn't like it anyway. Robert, go ahead, give us your piece.
Oh, I'd like to pull you up about your statements about the British done Ireland.
Yes.
And right, I know where you were coming from, right?
Yes, I know you
I
know.
don't see why
I know you
never
know.
Mentioned. Excuse me, can I speak?
I know you know.
Right. You never mentioned the Irish Republican government supplied IRA in the north to kill people, British subjects, and harbour them. What did you not mention that for?
Well, I was
and
actually...
only British to do things.
I was talking about the history, which is rather longer. Yeah, but I'm talking a rather longer ago history. I'm talking about Cromwell. I'm talking about the settlement by Scottish planters, some of whom might have been the antecedents of friends of yours, who were sent there as settlers, foreign settlers, to occupy the northeast. What's wrong with foreign settlers being sent to occupy and divide a country? There's a lot wrong with it. No, you can speak when I'm finished.
Yes.
I'm talking really about well, let's come to the 20th century.
Right.
And let's talk about the Irish people's vote. In overwhelming numbers, 75% of them voting for independence.
Right.
And that independence being cheated from them by the threat of orange terror in the northeast. And the maybe you don't. Maybe you don't.
Orange order.
I didn't say anything about the orange order. I said orange terror.
Yes,
that's what it's known as. What am I talking about?
Yes.
I'm talking about Carson and the Ulster Volunteers, who said that they would fight independence.
Yes.
And I'm talking about the British government's capitulation to that threat of orange terror and the subsequent partition of the country. Thus, no, I'm letting you in a minute because you're no match for me, Robert. You're not a match for me because I will in a minute, and people are going to marvel at your erudition.
Right.
So just
big fancy word.
Oh, big fancy words indeed. Big fancy words. Big fancy words. Erudition. Let me finish, and then I'll let you speak. Okay?
Right.
The Irish people were cheated of their independence, for which they voted in a democratic election in overwhelming numbers by the threat of orange terror in the northeast counties, which were settled by Scottish settlers who'd been sent there precisely for that purpose, to divide the Irish people, the better for Britain to rule it. And then the British government partitioned the country so that one of Ireland's 4 green fields remains in bondage. And that's an enduring problem. Now, people will fight, first of all, for equal status for Catholics in the northeast of Ireland, and secondly, they have every right to continue to struggle for the unification of their country. Over to you, Robert.
Right. If any organisation, you mentioned Orange Order, right?
I didn't mention the Orange Order. I said Orange Terror. I said Orange Terror. I didn't mention
the... What does Orange Terror mean?
I've told you. I told you.
What is Orange Terror?
I told you, Carson, the Ulster Volunteers, the arming of the settlers in the northeast corner of the country, and their threat to go to war if Ireland became independent.
If the Orange Order, any organisation...
Don't keep mentioning the Orange Order. I am not talking about the Orange Order. I know you're probably so ignorant of the history that you don't even know what I'm talking about. But get this into your mind, please. I'm talking about Carson. I'm talking about the Ulster Volunteers, who armed themselves and declared their intention to have an armed military rebellion if Ireland became independent. And Britain's capitulation to that threat of orange terror by the partitioning of the country. That's what I'm talking about.
Explain to me what orange terror means.
Well, I'll try and explain it for the third time. Carson, faced with the election result, which voted overwhelmingly for Irish independence, armed his followers, whom he called the Ulster Volunteers. He armed them with guns, with bombs, with grenades. Even, for a moment, it seemed as if some of the British battalions stationed in the northeast would join that rebellion. The British government capitulated to it and said, well, in that case, we'll partition the country. We'll give most of the country Free State status, but we will keep the northeast corner populated. Of course, they gerrymandered it to make sure that the boundaries would always yield them a majority, populated in part by the descendants of the Scottish settlers who had been sent there in order to divide the Irish people, the better for the British to rule it. I'm not going to say it again, Robert,
Right.
so
Well,
I hope it's sunk in this
Can I
time.
say something to you now?
Yeah.
Can I say something to you now?
Yeah.
The organisation that you mentioned went away and fought in the fields of France, the 36th Ulster Division, that was the Ulster Volunteer Force, right? When the people you were supporting, Connolly, was murdering British soldiers. So don't tell me anything about history.
James Connolly may be the greatest Scottish Irishman in the history of these islands, and I salute him. Now, Billy in County Armagh wants to pick a bone with me, so he's on next. Billy, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hiya, George.
Hi.
Yeah, no, I was listening to you about 5 minutes ago, and you were speaking to some guy from Scotland, and you said he was no match for you.
Yes, that's right.
What makes you have the authority to say that he's no match for you? Have you ever lived in Northern Ireland? Have you ever come through the troubles? Do you know what you're talking about?
I was talking to Robert in Coatbridge, who was as Scottish as me, although clearly had political leanings on the Irish conflict.
Yeah.
I am of Irish background, and I have been following Irish politics all of my life since I was a child, so I do think I know quite a bit about it.
Right. But you say you've followed. Have you actually lived here? Have you actually knew?
No, I haven't lived in Palestine either, but I know quite a lot about that too.
Have you ever had a phone call in the middle of the night and said, come and see your cousin, he's been shot 17 times by the IRA?
No, but I
have
have
had a phone call saying,
no, but I have had calls.
Innocent people.
No, but I have had calls threatening me with bullets from loyalist supporters in Glasgow. I have had police protection from them. I have been assaulted by loyalist supporters at Glasgow Airport.
Why is that?
Because I'm a supporter of the Irish Republican cause.
Why do you support the Irish Republican
Because
movement?
for the reasons that I explained to Robert, maybe you stopped listening at that point.
No, I was listening to the whole thing, and I couldn't understand it.
It's very easy to understand, Billy.
No, it's not.
There was a general election, and the Irish people voted in overwhelming numbers, 75% of them, for Irish independence. There was then a mobilisation and a threat of orange terror from Carson and his supporters.
You're talking about.
Well, yes.
Why do you keep going on about this orange tower? When that other guy, he was asked about the orange order, and you said.
I didn't say
no,
the orange order. I
You
didn't
kept saying
say.
about the orange.
I'm not talking about the orange order.
No, but what's the orange thing?
Carson. Ever heard of him?
I've heard of him, surely.
Of course
I know
you have.
About Lord Carson.
Lord Carson and his volunteers.
He was a Dublin man, actually.
Lord Carson and his volunteers threatened war if Britain gave Ireland independence, that the Irish people had voted for in overwhelming numbers. And rather than face up that threat of orange terror, the British government capitulated to it and partitioned the country. What's hard to understand about that, Billy?
But why did the British government, as you said, capitulate to it? Why?
Because some of them were cowards and the rest were knaves who actually sympathised with Carson and his cause. They wanted to retain a foothold in the Ireland that for centuries they had occupied. It's really not hard, Billy, in County Armagh to understand, and candidly, I don't believe that you don't understand it. What I believe is that you can't accept it. Now, Andrew in Newton Le Willows is up next after this.